Hello, I'm Ben Sloan and this is my lesson video on note identification on the guitar. In this lesson, I'll be going through every single note on the guitar through every single string across one octave. Knowing your notes on the guitar can really help when it comes to improvisation, writing your own material, and just knowing where everything is on the guitar whenever you might be jamming. It also really helps with understanding music theory on paper and in practicality when playing an instrument. Before going over all the notes on the guitar, we first need to know the musical alphabet, which is the following: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And then it repeats again back to A. It's also really important to understand tones and semitones. So in music, tones and semitones are kind of like the interval or the space between notes. So a semitone would be the smallest and the tone would be the biggest. And a tone is made up of two semitones. Semitones and tones also have a pattern within the musical alphabet. So this pattern would go like the following when looking at the alphabet. A and B would be a tone apart. B and C would be a semitone apart. C and D would be a tone. D and E would be a tone. E and F would be a semitone. F and G would be a tone. And then the alphabet would repeat again, and G and A would be a tone apart. Semitones and tones are very important in music, and you'll see these patterns without even realising them. So for example, when looking at a piano, you can see that there's the white keys and there's the black keys. But however, when you look at the notes B, C, and E and F, you can clearly see that they've got no black note in between them. That's because this black key on the piano is a sharp and a flat note. So flat notes bring the note down by a semitone, and sharpened notes bring it up by a semitone. This is why B, C, E, and F are a semitone apart, because there is no black key in between them. There is no sharp or flat key in between these notes, which means that they're a semitone apart, because all the other notes in the musical alphabet and also on the piano have sharps and flats in between them, whereas B, C, E, and F don't. So if you were to make F into an F flat, it would just be an E. And if you were to make an E into an E sharp, it would just be an F. That is what's called an enharmonic equivalent. So even though I'm talking about piano, it works exactly the same on guitar. So on guitar, each individual fret represents a semitone. So I would just work the same way. A and B would be a tone apart, but then B and C would be a semitone apart. And just like on piano, you also have your sharp and flat notes. However, just like piano again, there is no B sharp note, there is no C flat note, because they are enharmonic equivalents, which means that they are the same note. Let's just quickly recap what we went over there. So, the musical alphabet is A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. In this alphabet, you have semitones and tones, which is a pattern of kind of measuring the distance between different notes. With this pattern, you have notes that are tones apart, that will have sharps and flats in between them, and you also have notes that will be a semitone apart, like E, F, B, and C, which are all semitones apart. And as mentioned previously, the musical alphabet and the tone and semitone pattern is applicable to an instrument like guitar or piano, which is why on piano you see white keys and black keys. The black keys signify sharp or flat notes, and then you'll have some white notes that don't have a black key in between them, and those notes will either be E or F or B or C. Now that we understand that and that we've got that out the way, let's get to identifying the notes on guitar. So to begin, I'm going to start on the low E string right at the top of the guitar. So down here, we're going to start. We'll begin with the open note of E. So it's going to go like this: E, F, G, A, B, C, D, and then E. And we're going to stop there because we're only going to cover one octave. So that right there was one octave. After that, the pattern would then just repeat from this note right up here on the 12th fret, which is E. I'm going to play that one more time, a bit more up close, so you can exactly see where my finger is going and what notes I'm playing. So, first we're going to start with the open note of E. So we've got E, F, G, A, B, C, D, and then E. Just like I mentioned at the beginning, there's going to be some notes that are semitones apart and that are tones apart. That's why when I started playing this on the low E string, I went straight into the first fret to play F, because the open note is E, so that means I would go E, F, because it's a semitone apart. But, just like I said before, there are also notes that are tones apart. So if I go to G, right here, I would then skip a fret to go up to A, because if we remember, a tone is made up of two semitones, and every single fret on the guitar is a semitone. And for example again, if I go up to B and C, right up here, that is a semitone apart this time, because they're right next to each other. Both the frets are right next to each other because it's a semitone apart. This then means that in between the notes that are tones apart, there are the sharp and flat notes. So, for example, down here, I'll play a G sharp. So that is a G sharp because it's right in between G and A, but it would also be an A flat, because since A is right here and I go down a semitone, then that means it would also be A flat. So that note is G sharp / A flat. I'll now play all the notes on the E string one more time before moving on to the next one. So right here we have all the notes on the E string again. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, and then all the way back up to E on the 12th fret right there, and that is one octave meaning 8 notes, because we just counted up 8 notes right back up to E here on the 12th fret. Now that we've seen how the sharps and the flats, as well as how the tones and the semitones work in execution, I'm now going to go through every single other string and just list out every single note and just say them out as well while I play. So right here we have the A string, the second string down from the top string. I'm going to list through all the notes in this one octave, starting right now. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and back up to A on the 12th fret again, because that is the end of the octave. I'll do that now just a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then A again, just like that. I'll play all the notes on the A string again just one more time, up just a little bit closer so you can see exactly where my fingers are going. So, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then A right there, just like that. The best way to practice this is just going through every single string and then going through one octave with all the notes, just playing out all the regular notes. So when you're just playing the regular notes, you won't be playing the sharp or the flat notes. However, when you start to play all the regular notes, all the natural notes, you'll start to remember where the sharp / flat notes are, because they're all the ones in between. So as long as you know where all the natural notes are, you'll know where all of the sharp and flat notes are as well. Let's now do the D string, the third string down from the top one. I'm just going to do the one octave again, all the notes just like this. D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, just like that. I'll now do it one more time. I'm going to bring my guitar just a little bit closer so you can see exactly where my fingers are going, just like this. D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, right up there, and then that's all the notes on the D string over 1 octave. Now here are all the notes on the G string. This is the 4th string down from the top, and this is all the notes over 1 octave starting with G. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, back up again to the 12th fret, that's 1 octave done. I now play that a little bit closer so you can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm just going to use the one finger here just like this. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, just like that. Now here are all the notes on the B string over 1 octave just like this. B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, just like that. Hear those notes one more time, a little bit closer for you. B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and that's all the notes over 1 octave on the B string. Now, to finish off, we have all the notes on the E string, the high E string, right at the bottom of the guitar over 1 octave. But, since we also have the low E string up here, it's just exactly the same. It's going to be the same notes in the same order, just different pitches, and it's going to be like this. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, just like that. And here is that one more time. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, right like that, all the way up to the top, back up again to the 12th fret, that's 1 octave on the high E string. Now that is all of the notes on the guitar over 1 octave, and we went through and identified every single one. Now, again, there's also the sharp and flat notes. The best way that I've learned how to do this is just know where all of the natural notes are, all of the regular notes that are not sharp or flat. If you know where they are, then you know where the sharp and the flat notes are. So to recap this lesson, we've went over the musical alphabet, we've went over how tones and semitones work, we've also went over what sharp and flat notes are and how they work, as well as going through every single string and playing every single natural note over 1 octave. Now after that, when we get back up here to the 12th fret, it would just repeat again, the pattern would just repeat. You'd start right here, for example, on the low E string, E is right there, and then you just go F, G, A, B, C, and it just keep going all the way up. And now that's us covered all the notes over 1 octave on the guitar on every single string for the note identification lesson video. Thank you very much for watching.